this is. I wish there's got to be an app for like a fixed focus for recording. The thing is, this is like a 7-hour stream. I watched a little bit of it, and then I went for like an hour dog walk. Come back, watch a little bit more of it, troll the chat. There's going to be somebody who has screen recorded all 7 hours. Like somebody's got a 3 gigabyte 1080 copy of this floating around so they can make a response video. It's like, just who cares? Who cares? Just at the end of it, who cares? So this guy is actually like one of the second comments, and I had to turn off night mode, so I've got to watch this like a savage, because otherwise it's get too much reflection. He's like the second comment, and the dude just makes a really brilliant. There's a lot of smart comments in the comicsgate community, because I guess there's a lot of brainy people who, it's also like we've been dealing with this stuff for a long time. We see this, like, this is why this SJW guy, Taylor, he didn't really score a whole lot of points. It's like, because we've lived this for 3 years. We see, like, are there jerks on our side? Absolutely. Is Ethan one of them? Yeah, he can be jerkish. So can everyone. The thing is, their jerkishness is trying to get you deplatformed, trying to get you fired, trying to get you blacklisted from a university. Our jerkish is responding to that, trying to redress that grievance, or using gay as a pejorative. It's like that those aren't equivalent. You're trying to destroy somebody's life because they use a word you don't like. Like, you're trying to police their behavior, and we're trying to not have our lives destroyed. That's kind of what it boils down to. Anyway, so Comicsgate and the parallel economy, because this is actually a whole lot bigger than Comicsgate, and I think in the future we're going to see some stuff happen, especially with, there's a parallel economy system going up on Gab and the Patriots.wind. You have to get on Gab for that, though, because Gab is kind of where, I know people think Twitter is like, people on Twitter think Twitter is a cutting edge, and people on alt media know that it's not. This is bigger than Ethan and this Taylor guy, who are talking for like 3.5 hours by the end of it. I mean, that's like, you got to put a limit on these things. The sum of the argument is that people on social media can be jerks. Comicsgate or SJWs, Twitter brings out the worst in people, including our guys, as well as their guys. Both sides. Very few people behave like rational, reasonable adults on Twitter. I mean, there's dudes on our side, roughly on our side, who were like doing these adult pleasure device memes for years on end, and to the point where you're looking at them like, this is weird, this is getting weird. It's like, this is like 2 weeks of content that you've stretched out to 52 weeks. Anyway, so this Taylor guy, he made some good points, but I think he made like 8 or 9 out of 10, and or 1 or 2 points out of 10, and Ethan made the rest, because the facts favored Ethan's side, and like, we've all lived this, we've all seen this. It's like, we know the bulk of the argument is favoring our side, because we've seen how this stuff works. So what matters is that a group of comicsgaters were made to feel unwelcome in the mainstream. They felt disrespected, and they moved on, and they slowly formed Comicsgate, which is a free speech, anti-cancel culture collection of people who want to try something new. So kind of boils down to, is should we have the right to form our own business model, our own movement, free of SJWs? If you ask a lot of SJWs who are familiar with this Comicsgate revolution, which feels weird to say when we're dealing with like fat, bald 50-year-olds to talk about a comics revolution, a new business model, but it is what it is, and that's what it is. If you ask a lot of SJWs that question, they're going to say yes, but first of all, Comicsgate is not going away. In fact, I suspect it's more likely to cause other people to look at the model of this parallel economy and either join Comicsgate or start their own business gate, music gate. Like, that's what Gab and Patriot are talking about. They're having hiring boards, job boards. Like, eventually, it's gonna move into like, gee, you want your own neighborhoods, your own states, maybe? It's like, yeah, clearly we're not getting along. It's like, this is one facet of this much bigger crystal. So a group of people who are tired of SJWs canceling people who value free speech Remember pre-2016 when people were allowed to discuss things without getting doxxed, fired, and having their bank accounts closed? Because those days are gone forever. And now you have Twitter and the media actively working to destroy your life. Go read Bleeding Cool sometime and see how Rich Johnston covers comicsgate. Why hasn't Rich interviewed some of the guys in comicsgate? Doesn't it seem weird that the publicity is all negative? I mean, even if you're on the left, you got to realize that the level of bias is off the charts. Like, you're just getting Rich Johnston's opinion piece on everything, and it's coming from a far, far left. And the thing is, if he wrote anything that wasn't far left bias, well, he'd be canceled. So he's kind of stuck down this. He's stuck in this very narrow, very limited degrees of freedom on how he can interpret the news. So I imagine an interview would go something like, "So you guys hate women and the gays?" Answer, "No, we don't. And you sound like a gay pussy for asking." Rich Johnston, "But Myers and Mags argued on lines." Yeah, welcome to the internet. Mags writes cringe. We laughed. Then Mags turned into a meth gator and went scorched earth. It was a two-way street, as most things on Twitter are. That summed up the hatred of gays and meth gators. They write cringe. It's your duty to laugh at them. They don't get a pass because of who they have sex with. That is childish Tumblr behavior. If they ignored Comicsgate, Comicsgate would be a much smaller collection. But they can't. They just can't leave it alone. Comicsgate cannot hurt the mainstream Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse. Marvel is doing great. Or maybe it's not doing great. It's kind of a moot point because it's for different audiences, this guy points out. And he did a pretty good job. They want a young female audience or a soy kind of new male metrosexual type of audience. And we're talking about more than comics. Really, a lot of pop culture had this soylent cow food for the cattle slaves who need to be told what to think. Movies were getting lame before 2020 BLM riots. Now, they're going to be nothing more than cancer with a side of super AIDS. I'm wondering if you might see more low-budget indie shows like Clerks style type of film. It's a monetization and distribution that's the problem there, because the platforms are all super woke. Think about Clerks, and if you haven't seen Clerks, you go check it out. It's made on a low-budget film. It's kind of the model for low-budget films that are massively successful. You couldn't make it today as it was because it didn't have the right kind of diversity. It had, I don't know, English, German, Swedish, Italians, but that's not what Hollywood will allow. So the streaming services won't pick it up because when they mean diversity, they mean not European. And I'm ready for a break from having that force-fed to me. I want a break from SJW 1984 good think, pre-approved think. You know, as I say, leaders aren't elected, they're selected. It's like, it's kind of true because the field is winnowed down for you to elect the final pre-approved choices. That's kind of pop culture too, and it's like the stuff we're left with is crap. It's like Comicsgate is only possible because there's so much crap out there. You would never have heard of Comicsgate if the big four mainstream industry was putting out good stuff. It was so bad. Go back 3 years and go watch some of Zach's earlier videos. He's talking about America Chavez and Squirrel Girl and Kim and Kim. That was the fertilizer that allowed Comicsgate to grow into a beautiful rose. So there are some Twitter kids who really, really hate EBS and Comicsgate. But the thing is, at least a few of them are monetizing it on YouTube, which is great. Do I really believe that these soy boys care about EBS this much? No. They view it as a couple $1,000s per month in Patreon and YouTube ad revenue. So they put on this faux outrage show. It's not, I hope it's not real. I hope they're just monetizing it and it's not real outrage. Comic Book Cut, I'm not sure where he's coming from. I hope he has a come to Jesus moment and realizes that, yeah, there's a lot of assholes here, but we're all assholes going in the same direction. So it's not the time to attack each other. He's got the Patriot Hut. He does politics, which I think he should stick to. He's better at. Don't be ashamed of what you are or what you like. Taylor mentioned the 90s feel of Cyberfrog and some of the other comics stuff. Yeah, older comics were better. I go back even further and say from like 1950 to 1990 was the peak, in my opinion. So it's like even pre-90s stuff. A lot of what Taylor was saying was a straw man. But to be fair, EVS is also so full of shit. But who isn't? That's the thing. Is like we're all full of shit. We're all human. We're all jerks on Twitter. Most of us. There are a few like Doug Ernst, Tim Lim, Doug TenNapel. There are a few guys who are pretty reasonable, level-headed guys. I Love Comics, Angle Team from I Love Comics. There's like a half a dozen guys who are like the reasonable, mature adults. But it's like a half a dozen guys. The rest of us are just dicks on social media, because that's what social media is all about. And the thing is, EVS is full of shit. He remembers things. We all remember things the way we want. And it boils down to, like, people are assholes on Twitter, all sides, because that's what Twitter is. That it's a misinformation platform. And as Zach talks about getting off Twitter, he might be right. It's a question of, does the money it bring in make it worth the risk of being kicked off YouTube? I consider myself very knowledgeable in the soy science of SJWs. I don't think Twitter is worth it for someone at EVS's level to look at something like, Twitter brought in 7%. I mean, is Twitter bringing in 20% or is it bringing in closer to 5%? That's something to consider, because the downside is getting deplatformed. He could get kicked off YouTube because of an outrage mob from Twitter just reporting his stuff nonstop. If you're off Twitter, you just don't get the same negative feedback. My other point is, even if EVS or Myers gets kicked off YouTube, comicsgate as a whole will still survive, which is why it's important to have massively parallel platforms. Like, if you're live streaming on YouTube, there's no reason to not live stream on DLive. I know you're thinking, like, I'm going to lose some super chats. You're going to lose a few super chats, but not as many as you think, and you're also going to build up your alternative platform for the time when you ultimately do get. Like, you can live stream on Odysee and DLive, and it's really worth it in the long term, at least in my opinion, because eventually you get kicked off YouTube. Well, you're going to have to find that alt platform. Oh, my point is, like, even if they do get kicked off, comicsgate as a whole will survive. Another channel will step up to the front. It might be Malin or Cecil or I don't know, and become the flagship channel, because comicsgate is a business model now. It's, at its loosest definition, a group of soy-free people making comics. That concept is not going to go away. They want to make comics. You could name it Soy Free Comics, Rebel Comics. The name doesn't matter. It's a fuck your censorship and rules comics. Make stuff that people buy, then sell it to them, hopefully on time, which, Tim Lim and Douglas Ernst and a few others are very good at that model. Another point I know might ruffle some feathers is that Vox Day, Doug TenNapel, JDA. JDA is great. He's got some great stuff out there too. He always kind of gets left out of the equation because he's not one of the bigger names, but the dude's really talented. Mike Miller, all those guys are comicsgate. Oh, the funny thing is these two guys are both, I don't know, this Taylor guy's probably 40 and Ethan's 50. They're both wearing ball caps. I'm like, it's probably a time to stop wearing ball caps. Probably, at 28, maybe, unless you're actually outside in the sun. But these guys are indoors and they're wearing ball caps. For some reason, I don't know, it just seems weird to me. All these guys are amazing storytellers, and is he wearing an all caps cap? All right, I guess that makes sense. All these guys are amazing storytellers, and the lies told about them are just silly. Monday Matt level nonsense. Monday Matt's got a few channels. The dude is, he's got good movie reviews, but his woke take is just, it's cringy to hear somebody who's that full of soy. The thing is, I hope comicsgate doesn't become the thing that we claim to hate. Right-wing SJWs, or not even right-wing, but like milquetoast right-wing SJWs who are terrified of guys who are a millimeter further to the right. There's not time for infighting. Like, there's not time to punch right. Just leave those people alone. These guys, they're not any thing of the labels that have been applied to them. I've listened to all of them. They're all perfectly reasonable guys. It seems like the SJWs call EVS a right-wing Nazi. So he turns around and he calls Vox a right-wing Nazi. That's soy behavior, and EVS knows it because I can hear it in his voice. He knows he's doing something a little slimy. It's like you can see it in their facial recognitions, and you can hear it in the voice inflections. It's like he knows he's on shaky ethical grounds when he does that. There's just no need to do it. You're all in the same boat. You're all blacklisted. So stop acting like emo girls on a starvation diet. Your allies, whether you want to admit it or not. Anyway, he's got the stream still up. You can go watch the first three. It's like 3.5 hours of them, and then it goes on for another 3 hours. I can't imagine live streaming, like sitting down and just like being active and sweating and just it just seems gross to the there's a lot of dedication. There's a lot of work that goes into live streaming, man. Seriously. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.